Hello and welcome. World War II presents as a heroic clash of ideologies: democracy against fascism, freedom against tyranny, with the fate of humanity poised on a knife's edge. Yet, beneath the banners and speeches, beyond the heroism of soldiers and the thunder of tanks, lies the ancient, cold, calculating engine of history: money. Wars are not only fought, they are financed. Tanks don't roll, bombers don't fly, and vast armies don't march without intricate systems of credit, commodity flows, and balance sheets to keep them moving. And in the quiet rooms where capital crosses borders, the financial movers and shakers never pledge allegiance to flags. Their loyalty exclusively serves liquidity, legal obligations, and the guaranteed promise of massive returns. The financial scaffolding for the 1939-45 cataclysm was set in motion by the aftermath of the First World War. The 1919 Treaty of Versailles imposed crushing reparations on Germany, contributing to political instability and the Weimar hyperinflation of 1923. Into this turmoil stepped international finance. The Dawes Plan 1924 and the Young Plan of 1929 were presented as pragmatic efforts to stabilise payments and reintegrate Germany into global markets. They were also exceedingly lucrative. American and British banks, among them JP Morgan and Co., extended substantial credits, often backed by German tax revenues and industrial earnings. These flows helped revive German industry, but they also made the recovery dependent on foreign short-term loans. When Wall Street crashed in 1929 and capital retreated, the Weimar economy crashed and burned. The ensuing crisis discredited democratic governance for many Germans and smoothed the political ascent of radical alternatives, including the Nazi Party. To say foreign capital built Hitler's war machine is too simplistic. To say it never matters is naive. It laid tracks that later carried heavier freight. When Adolf Hitler took power in 1939, rapid rearmament, explicitly forbidden by Versailles, was a central aim. Hjalmar Schacht, the president of the Reichsbank and later economics minister, craftily engineered financial workarounds. Promissory MEFO bills masked deficit spending, bilateral clearing arrangements conserved scarce foreign currency. Price and capital controls directed resources to strategic sectors. Foreign capital and technology still mattered. German industrial giants such as IG Farben, Krupp and the Thyssen Group benefited from international investment. Patent pools and technology exchanges forged in the 1920s and early 30s. American corporations maintained significant operations. General Motors, Opel subsidiary, and Ford Work in Cologne manufactured vehicles that the Wehrmacht later relied upon. Standard Oil of New Jersey and IG Farben shared patents and processes vital to synthetic fuels and chemicals. IBM's German subsidiary Domag supplied punch card systems that the Nazi state used to catalogue populations, among many administrative functions of the death camps. Corporate headquarters later argued that subsidiaries operated with autonomy under local law. Critics countered that profits and know-how continued to flow across borders. Much of this activity was legal before the war. The moral ledger is less tidy than the legal one. In the realm of high finance, neutrality adopts the form of procedure. The Bank for International Settlements, the BIS, founded in 1930 in Basel to manage reparations and foster cooperations among central banks, continued to function throughout the war. Its board included representatives from both Allied and Axis nations, and it served as a meeting point where transactions could be cleared even as armies clashed. The BIS handled gold transfers for several central banks, including the Reichsbank. Gold that subsequent inquiries showed included reserves looted from occupied treasuries and, in part, bullion traceable to the depredations of the Holocaust. Defenders argued that maintaining channels would aid eventual reconstruction. Critics saw a legal sanctuary for a criminal economy. Both were, in different ways, correct. Across the Channel, the Bank of England's fidelity to formal obligations produced a notorious episode. In 1939, following Germany's occupation of Prague, Czechoslovak gold that had been deposited with the BIS and held in London was transferred on BIS instructions to the Reichsbank. The Bank of England complied on legalistic grounds, prompting a political firestorm. The episode laid bare a bleak truth. Financial institutions, by design, privilege the sanctity of contracts and custodial duties, even when moral considerations demand disobedience. Neutral countries became arteries of wartime commerce. Swiss banks, protected by stringent secrecy laws, were crucial intermediaries in gold and foreign exchange markets. Switzerland also served as a conduit for industrial goods and raw materials. Later commissions, such as the Bergier Commission in the 1990s, documented how Swiss financial and commercial institutions profited from dealings with Nazi Germany, including handling looted gold. Elsewhere, Sweden sold iron ore and precision bearings, Portugal and Spain marketed tungsten, and Turkey exported chrome, illustrating how commodity trades threaded through neutrality to sustain war economies on both sides. Private firms navigated through this landscape through subsidiaries, joint ventures, and patent agreements that blurred the line between commerce and complicity. Standard Oil's specialised additives reached Germany via neutral intermediaries in the early war period. IBM's systems powered bureaucratic efficiency, and banks and insurers maintained offices in occupied or neutral territories, sometimes continuing business until wartime regulations or sieges forced cessation. In the United States, the Union Banking Corporation, UBC, of New York, linked to German industrialist Fritz Thyssen, an early Hitler supporter, had its assets seized in 1942 under the Trading with the Enemy Act. Among UBC's directors was Prescott Bush, the father of future President George H.W. Bush. The seizure underscored the tangled pre-war and early war connections between American finance and German capital. It did not, however, constitute criminal convictions for the directors. As with many wartime financial cases, the record is muddled, with no effort to uncover responsibilities and culpability. To focus solely on private profit is to miss the sheer scale of public finance mobilised by the democracies. The United States and Britain financed the war through massive bond programs, higher taxation, monetary management, and rationing of credit and materials. Lend-Lease supplied the Allies with arms, food and raw materials on an unprecedented scale, effectively globalising the US balance sheet in service of victory. The City of London, even under bombardment, remained an organisational hub for Allied finance. If shadowy profits found their way into discrete accounts, the bright machinery of state finance dwarfed them in magnitude and consequence. Nazi Germany's war economy fed not only on bank loans and barter deals, but on outright theft and coercion. Gold and currency were appropriated from occupied territories, industrial facilities were dismantled, and labour was either conscripted or subjected to enslavement. Additionally, clearing systems compelled occupied nations to export goods in exchange for Reich IOUs. The Reichsbank processed bullion that included the jewellery and dental gold of victims. These were not financial abstractions. They were crimes, booked, weighed, and entered as assets. In 1945, the moral calculation did not balance cleanly. But then the Cold War arrived, abruptly shifting priorities. West Germany was reintegrated into the Western Alliance. The Marshall Plan funded European recovery. Denazification proceeded unevenly. The Nuremberg trials included proceedings against industrialists and bankers. IG Farben was dissolved into successor companies, BASF, Bayer, Host, and the Krupp case probed corporate complicity. Yet many institutions that had profited, or at least persisted, during the war resumed prominent roles in the post-war order. The BIS, targeted for dissolution at Bretton Woods, persisted and ultimately became a backbone of central bank cooperation. Decades later, investigations and settlements, most notably with Swiss banks in the 1990s over dormant accounts and looted gold, reopened questions that had been hastily sealed. Capital is an ardent pacifist in only one sense. It prefers stability. When politics turn violent, finance correspondingly seeks continuity through neutrality, intermediaries, and legal formalism. That impulse can keep trade alive and may hasten reconstruction. It can also sanitize plunder and enable aggression by providing channels for stolen wealth and strategic materials. The lesson is not that banks caused the war, nor that every cross-border contract was nefarious. It's that the international financial system, its norms, contracts, and incentives proved remarkably adaptive to total war. Some actors exploited their adaptiveness for profit regardless of human cost. Others clung to legal obligation in ways that abetted immoral ends. Meanwhile, democratic states demonstrated that public finance on a colossal scale can be marshalled in defence of freedom if the political will exists. The architecture that allowed dual dealings did not collapse in 1945. Rather, it changed appearance, evolved, and flourished. Today's sanctions regimes, anti-money laundering rules, beneficial ownership registries, and compliance frameworks are all attempts to bind finance to moral purpose without destroying the cross-border flows that modern economies require. Their effectiveness rests on vigilance rather than on comforting myths. Wars may be fought for ideas, territory, or survival, but the gears turn only when the money moves. In the ledger of the Second World War, the entries are written in more than one ink. Courage and sacrifice, yes, but also credit and collateral, invoices and interest, secrecy and gold. And in that ledger, too many lines end in profit that outlive the pain. If there's a sobering takeaway, it's this. When the world takes sides, central bankers take precautions and profits. Remember, when a currency fails, ordinary people are told it's the result of uncontrollable forces, war, natural disaster, and poor leadership. But history tells another story. The manipulated rise and fall of money shapes and determines the fate of nations. And when currencies are deliberately collapsed, wealth does not vanish. It discreetly, unobtrusively, and stealthily changes hands. Populations lose everything, while the globalists clean up via clandestinely orchestrated transnational asset redistribution, heavily obfuscated by corrupt media and NLP-curated perception control. The unseen and unknown money managers come and go in the obscurity of history's dark shadows. But globalism's racketeering shell game continues unhindered with its genocidal agenda of endless wars. Thank you for watching.